Taking off with Boeing, a century of soaring, and stalling, Boeing. It's as American as apple pie, baseball, and, well, plane crashes. For over a century, they've been building behemoths of the sky. From humble biplanes to jumbo jets, their name has become synonymous with air travel. They've taken us to the moon. But even Boeing has its off days. Remember the Dreamliner debacle? Battery fires, grounding planes, it was a PR nightmare. Fast forward to 2024, and guess what? Boeing's back in the spotlight. This time it's the 737 MAX 9, the troubled younger sibling of the infamous 737 MAX 8. Think of it as the Real Housewives of aircraft, full of drama and questionable decisions. The MAX 9, when innovation tries to outsmart experience. The 737 MAX 9, sleek, modern, and about as reliable as your friend who swears they'll stop borrowing your clothes. It's marketed as a fuel-efficient, cost-effective workhorse for airlines. More passengers, fewer gallons, what's not to love? Well, there's the whole obeying the laws of physics thing. The MAX 9 is essentially a stretched version of the MAX 8, with bigger engines slapped on to compensate for the extra weight and length. Think of it as trying to stuff 10 pounds of potatoes in a 5-pound bag. It's not going to end well. Those bigger engines change the plane's center of gravity, making it prone to stalling. Stalling in an airplane isn't like stalling for time when your date asks about your non-existent cooking skills. It's a serious aerodynamic issue that can lead to a rapid loss of lift and a very unpleasant meeting with the ground. To address this, Boeing's engineers installed a software system called MCAS, Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. The idea was to automatically push the plane's nose down if it sensed an impending stall. MCAS, more like making control a surprise, am I right? MCAS, the software equivalent of that friend who helps you clean your apartment but ends up reorganizing your entire sock drawer. It was supposed to be a safety feature, a silent protector working behind the scenes to keep the MAX 9 from going all nose to the ground. Instead, it became the star of the show, and not in a good way. MCAS relied on a single sensor to determine if the plane was about to stall. One sensor. What could possibly go wrong? Quite a lot. A faulty sensor, a bird strike, even a strong gust of wind could trigger MCAS into thinking the plane was about to fall out of the sky. And when MCAS kicked in, it kicked in hard. It would repeatedly push the plane's nose down, overriding the pilot's controls, even if the pilots were desperately trying to regain altitude. Imagine trying to drive your car with someone constantly yanking on the steering wheel. To make matters worse, Boeing decided not to tell anyone about MCAS. Whistleblower whispers Houston, we have a corporate culture problem. Surely someone at Boeing knew about this, right? Enter the whistleblowers, those brave souls who dared to point out that the corporate giant had no clothes. These weren't just disgruntled employees complaining about the coffee in the break room. These were engineers, safety experts, people who knew a thing or two about building airplanes that didn't spontaneously decide to take a nosedive. They had raised red flags about MCAS early on, warning that it was overly aggressive, prone to errors, and could potentially lead to disaster. But their concerns were met with resistance, denial, and a whole lot of corporate double talk. And so, the whistleblowers were silenced, ignored, or simply pushed aside. Section 5. The Canary in the Coal Mine, 2024's string of unfortunate incidents. Remember that whole obeying the laws of physics thing? Well, it turns out physics doesn't care about corporate deadlines or stock prices. And in 2024, the 737 MAX 9S came home to roost. Flying became about as appealing as a root canal without anesthesia. Suddenly, everyone was an aviation expert. Social media exploded with #boycott Boeing hashtags and memes of planes doing the Macarena. Airlines scrambled to reassure passengers, but the damage was done. The public trust, once as high as a cruising altitude, had plummeted faster than a lead balloon. People were canceling flights, opting for road trips, or just staying home and talking to their plants. Even the usually unflappable flight attendant seemed on edge. Section 7, Boeing's PR tailspin. Can you say crisis management 101? Now, you'd think that a company facing such a PR disaster would, try to do some damage control. Maybe issue a heartfelt apology, express their deepest condolences, promise to do better. But Boeing, not so much. Their initial response was about as effective as a screen door on a submarine. They denied responsibility, blamed the pilots, and insisted that the 737 MAX 9 was perfectly safe.
Another Boeing whistleblower has died after a sudden infection. 44-year-old Joshua Dean died Tuesday after a surprise staph infection left him in critical condition. Dean was a former quality auditor at Boeing supplier Spirit Aerosystems. He was one of the first whistleblowers to accuse Spirit leadership of ignoring manufacturing defects on 737 MAX planes. Dean lost his job in 2023 and filed a retaliation complaint alleging he was fired for speaking out. He was represented by the same law firm that represented Boeing whistleblower John Mitch Barnett. Barnett was found dead in an apparent suicide back in March.
It began with a series of minor incidents: near misses, aborted takeoffs, pilots reporting strange behavior from the aircraft. But then came the big one.
After that Alaska Airlines mid-air scare over Portland, Oregon, this morning thousands of people are dealing with the aftermath of dozens of flight cancellations.
Safety first, I get it. I totally understand why Alaska's doing it.
Meanwhile, federal investigators are now on the ground in Portland, trying to figure out why a section of this plane's fuselage detached in the sky Friday with almost 180 people on board.
We declared emergency. We needed to send down to 10,000.
The NTSB says the chaotic scene unfolded just 10 minutes after takeoff at around 16,000 feet, roughly half of cruising altitude.
Section 6. Public perception nosedives flying in this economy with plane. Remember when flying was glamorous? When people dressed up for it like they were going to a cocktail party in the sky? Yeah, those days are long gone.
Think about what happens when you're in cruise. Everybody's up and walking. Folks don't have seatbelts on. We could have ended up with something so much more tragic.
There were no reports of serious injuries, and although no one was sitting directly next to the missing panel, one passenger says a boy sitting nearby lost his shirt.
And the son's shirt was like completely blown off in his body.
The more Boeing tried to defend themselves, the deeper they dug their own grave.
Whistleblowers speaking publicly for the very first time about quality concerns over a key Boeing supplier. Kansas-based Spirit Aerosystems builds the bulk of the Boeing 737 MAX. We all remember when that door panel on a 737 MAX blew out during an Alaska Airlines flight back in January.
If quality mattered, I would still be a Spirit.
For about a decade, Santiago Paredes worked at the end of the production line at one of Boeing's largest suppliers, Spirit Aerosystems, doing final inspections on 737 fuselages before they'd ship to Boeing. How often did you find issues?
Every day. I'm finding over 100 defects in every day.
Findings he says his managers pressured him to keep to a minimum, even, he says, referring to him by the nickname Showstopper, because repairs he identified delayed deliveries, which he says cost Spirit money.
They always said that they didn't have time to fix the mistakes.
Didn't have time because they needed to get the planes out?
The complaints out, yep.
While the two 737 MAX crashes that killed 346 people in 2018 and 2019 were not blamed on problems at Spirit, Paredes hoped they would have been a quality wake-up call.
And I felt responsible in a way. I came home, I cried to my wife. I was like, this is so frustrating. I was like, hundreds of people have already died, and they're not changing. I was like, and they're not changing.
He says quality issues persisted. CBS News spoke with several current and former Spirit employees and reviewed photos of dented fuselages and a wrench they say was left behind in a supposedly ready-to-deliver component.
They became the poster child for corporate greed and negligence. Section 8, the aftermath, lawsuits, investigations, and a whole lot of paperwork. Remember those legal disclaimers they make you scroll through before you can use a new app? The ones that basically say, if anything goes wrong, it's your fault, not ours? Yeah, well, those don't really hold up so well when you're talking about a plane crash. In the wake of the 2024 tragedy, the lawsuits came pouring in faster than luggage on a carousel after a delayed flight. Families of the victims, airlines stuck with grounded planes, investors who'd lost their shirts. Everyone wanted a piece of Boeing. The FAA, after initially dragging their feet, launched a full-scale investigation into Boeing's safety practices. Congress held hearings, senators grilled executives, and the media had a field day. Boeing, facing billions of dollars in fines, settlements, and lost revenue, was forced to admit that maybe, just maybe, they'd made a few tiny, insignificant mistakes. They promise to fix the MCAS software, improve pilot training, and generally be better corporate citizens.
This morning, police in Charleston, South Carolina tell NBC News they are aware of the death of a former Boeing employee turned whistleblower. 62-year-old John Barnett found dead on Friday from what the coroner calls an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound.
So this is my retirement plaque.
Barnett retired from Boeing in 2017 after working as a quality manager for more than 30 years. Since his departure, he has taken legal action against the company, claiming he was retaliated against for raising safety issues internally, issues that Boeing denied at the time. Back in 2019, Barnett sat down with Today, describing a haphazard safety culture at Boeing.
From day one, it's just all been about schedule and hurry up and just get it done, push the planes out. We're behind schedule. You know, we don't have time to worry about issues that y'all bring up.
In 2017, the FAA released a review upholding many of Barnett's concerns. With regards to his sudden death, the company released a statement writing, "We are saddened by Mr. Barnett's passing, and our thoughts are with his family and friends." Production standards at Boeing are under intense scrutiny, following a series of troubling incidents involving Boeing planes. The latest on Monday, when a 787 from the South American airline LATAM apparently dropped abruptly mid-flight from Sydney to Auckland, injuring at least 50 passengers and crew members. The airline says it's unclear what caused the strong movement on the flight.
Section 9, lessons learned, hopefully. Safety first, profit second, maybe third. So what did we learn from all of this? Well, for starters, that maybe, just maybe, designing a safe and reliable airplane should take precedence over maximizing profits and meeting shareholder expectations. We also learned that whistleblowers, those brave souls who dare to speak truth to power, deserve our respect and protection. And perhaps most importantly, we learned that even in our technologically advanced world, there's still a human cost to our actions. When we cut corners, prioritize profits over people, and silence dissenting voices, the consequences can be catastrophic. Section 10. The future of the 737 MAX 9. Will it fly again or become a giant paperweight? As of this writing, the Boeing 737 MAX 9 remains grounded worldwide. Its future is uncertain, its reputation in shambles. Will it ever fly again? Or will it become a cautionary tale? A giant paperweight gathering dust in a hangar somewhere? Boeing is certainly hoping for the former. They've spent billions of dollars fixing the MCAS software, improving pilot training, and trying to convince the world that the MAX 9 is now safe to fly. But the public remains skeptical. Will people ever feel comfortable boarding a MAX 9 again? Only time will tell. Section 11. So, what's next for aviation? Buckle up, it's going to be a bumpy ride. The Boeing 737 MAX 9 saga is a stark reminder that the aviation industry is at a crossroads. As technology advances, airlines strive for greater efficiency, and the demand for air travel continues to grow. We face a critical question. What are we willing to sacrifice in the name of progress? Will we prioritize safety over speed, innovation over experience, human lives over corporate profits? The choices we make today will determine the future of aviation. Let's hope we make the right ones.